Ameke village in Enugu was a place where tradition wasn't just a word, it was life itself. A man's worth wasn't measured by his wealth or titles, but by the strength of his hands and the kindness of his heart. And in the heart of this village lived Michael Okoye, the young warrior every boy dreamed of becoming. Michael wasn't just strong, he was honorable. His dark skin glistened under the sun as he worked the farmlands, his broad shoulders carrying more than just physical burdens. He carried the respect of his people. Elders nodded in pride when he passed. Women whispered softly behind their wrappers, hoping to catch his eye, but none ever did. For all his admiration, Michael remained humble. He helped anyone in need. If an old woman struggled to carry firewood, Michael was there. If a neighbor's roof caved in, Michael would fix it before dawn. The village adored him, not just for his strength, but for his heart. But there was one person who never cared about his muscles or titles: Cynthia Nwosu. Cynthia was unlike any girl in Ameke, bold, curious, and a little mischievous. Her fatherless background made her a target for whispers. But Cynthia never let it break her spirit, and every time the world tried to dim her light, Michael was there to remind her of who she was. They had grown up together, best friends since childhood. Under the shade of their favorite mango tree, they shared dreams. "You'll be a great warrior one day, Michael," Cynthia would say, her eyes sparkling. "And you?" Michael would ask, grinning. "I'll leave this village and see the world. Maybe I'll even marry a prince," she'd declare, spinning with laughter. Michael would laugh too, teasing, "Then I'll have to fight the prince to make sure he deserves you." Their bond was unspoken, but unbreakable. But as they grew older, things began to shift. The girls of Ameke would swoon as Michael walked by, but his heart remained tethered to Cynthia. Yet neither of them dared to name what they truly felt. One evening, as the golden sun dipped behind the palm trees, Michael sat beneath their mango tree, sharpening his machete. Cynthia sat opposite him, her hands playfully plucking at the grass. "You know, Michael," she said with a smirk, "if I had a goat for every girl who's tried to impress you, I'd have a whole herd by now." Michael smiled without looking up. "And if I had a yam for every time you said that, I'd own a plantation." Cynthia laughed, the sound filling the evening air. "Why don't you ever give them a chance?" she teased. Michael paused, then looked up, his eyes soft. "Maybe I'm just waiting for someone who doesn't see me as a trophy." Cynthia's heart skipped, but she masked it with her usual grin. "Well, good luck with that. Seems like you'll be sitting under this tree for a long time." They both laughed, but beneath the teasing, there was a current of emotions neither dared to confront. But destiny had its own plans. For in the distance, a breeze was blowing toward Ameke, a breeze that carried with it a woman named Vanessa Clark, a woman who would change everything. Ameke village had seen many strangers pass through, traders, travelers, even wandering musicians, but none arrived with the grace and presence of Vanessa Clark. She appeared one afternoon, walking through the village square like a calm storm. Her skin was smooth like palm oil, her movements fluid like a river's flow. Dressed in a wrapper finer than any fabric Ameke women owned, Vanessa's smile was soft, mysterious, and dangerous. She wasn't loud, but she didn't need to be. Every eye followed her. "Who is she?" the women whispered. "Where did she come from?" the men wondered. For the first time, Michael Okoye, the warrior who had never chased a woman, was captivated. Vanessa wasn't like the girls who giggled behind their hands. She didn't flutter her lashes or try to impress him. She was different, elegant, distant, untouchable. And Michael wanted to know her. The village watched in disbelief as Michael, the pride of Ameke, began to pursue Vanessa. He brought her the ripest fruits from his farm, fetched water alongside her at the stream, a task no man of his status would dare do, and even carved a delicate wooden comb for her, presenting it under the moonlit sky. The whispers in Ameke grew louder. "Michael is finally in love. Vanessa must be special. Cynthia Nwosu will not like this." But Cynthia said nothing. She watched from a distance, masking her emotions behind teasing smiles. At night, she told herself it didn't matter. Michael was her best friend. That was enough. but every time she saw him laugh with Vanessa, her chest tightened. Still, she smiled when he came to tell her the news. She said yes, Michael announced one evening, excitement glowing on his face. Cynthia sat by the river, tossing stones absent-mindedly. She paused, looked up at him, and forced a bright smile. Who said yes? Vanessa, Michael beamed. She agreed to marry me. For a heartbeat, Cynthia's world blurred. That's amazing, Michael. I thought this day would never come, she said, her voice steady, though her heart wavered. Michael sat beside her, exhaling deeply. Cynthia, I feel like my life is finally beginning. Cynthia reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. Then I am happy for you. But deep within, she felt something break. The boy who used to dream under this very tree with her was now slipping away into a life she wasn't part of. Still, Cynthia said nothing. But there was another person who wasn't as silent. Obinna, a well-respected young man of Ameke, had long harbored feelings for Cynthia. He brought her gifts, won wrestling matches to impress her, even sought Michael's advice on how to win her heart. But Cynthia wasn't moved. Cynthia is different, Michael told Obinna one evening. She doesn't fall for sweet words or gifts. She follows her heart. But how do I get her to see me? Obinna asked, frustration simmering. Michael sighed. Maybe she's not meant for you. As Michael's wedding day approached, Cynthia's world felt smaller. But what no one knew, what not even Michael knew, was that Cynthia's life was about to change in ways she never imagined. For her mother, Mama Esther, carried a secret heavy enough to uproot their entire existence. And that secret would tear Cynthia away from Ameke and from Michael. The evening before Michael Okoye's wedding to Vanessa Clark should have been a night of celebration in Ameke village. The talking drums echoed through the square, elders gathered in their wrappers, and women gossiped about the union that was about to happen. But in a small hut at the edge of the village, Mama Esther was pacing. Her face, once calm and strong, was now creased with fear. Cynthia Nwosu, her daughter, watched her from the mat, confused. Mama, what's wrong? Cynthia asked softly. Mama Esther stopped pacing, her hands trembling. We're leaving, Cynthia, at sunrise. The words hit Cynthia like a slap. What? Mama, why would we leave? Michael's wedding is tomorrow, and this is our home. Mama Esther's eyes glistened with tears, but she refused to explain. I cannot tell you now, my child, but we must go. You must trust me. Cynthia stood, her voice rising. What about Michael? What about the life we have here? Mama, please tell me the truth. But Mama Esther only pulled her daughter into a tight embrace, her body shaking. Forgive me, my child. I wish I could give you answers. But we must leave now, before it's too late. That night, while the village slept, Cynthia couldn't. Her heart was too heavy. The thought of leaving Ameke, of leaving Michael, felt unbearable. And so she ran. She ran barefoot through the narrow village paths until she reached Michael's hut. Tears blurred her vision as she knocked on his wooden door. When Michael opened the door and saw her standing there, his heart dropped. Cynthia, he whispered. What's wrong? I'm leaving, Michael, she choked out. Mama says we have to go. By sunrise. The color drained from Michael's face. Leaving? No, you can't. You can't leave, Cynthia. I don't want to, she sobbed. But she won't change her mind. Michael stepped forward, grabbing her shoulders. Then I'll speak to her. She won't listen, Michael, Cynthia interrupted, her voice breaking. I don't even know if I'll ever come back. A silence hung between them, filled only by the sound of their breathing. They stared at each other, and in that moment, every unspoken word, every hidden emotion, hung in the air. Michael pulled her into a fierce embrace, the kind that speaks louder than any goodbye. He held her as if holding her would stop time, stop the inevitable. Stay, he whispered into her hair. Stay with me. I can't, she whispered back, tears wetting his chest. They stood like that, two hearts breaking, knowing that fate was pulling them apart. By dawn, as the village still slept, a horse-drawn cart stood by Mama Esther's hut. 3 men dressed in rich, unfamiliar garments stood guard. Their presence felt out of place in the humble village. Michael watched from a distance, hidden among the trees, as Cynthia climbed into the cart. Their eyes met one last time. No words were spoken. Only a look that carried a lifetime of memories, laughter, and a bond neither of them could explain. Then with the creak of wooden wheels, Cynthia was gone, and Michael was left behind, standing at the threshold of a life that suddenly felt empty. But the village would not wait. That evening, Michael Okoye would stand before the elders of Ameke, dressed in his finest to marry a woman whose beauty was admired, but whose heart he could never truly hold. And so the stage was set. Michael was about to step into a marriage that would not only shatter his world, but reveal the curse that would haunt him. The village of Ameke was alive with celebration. Talking drums beat proudly, women danced with calabashes on their heads, and men cheered as Michael Okoye, the village's most admired warrior, stood before the elders, ready to marry Vanessa Clark. But Michael's heart was heavy. His thoughts wandered, not to Vanessa's beauty, but to the girl who should have been here, Cynthia Nwosu. He could still see her teary eyes as she was taken away in that cart. He shook off the thought. This was his wedding day. He had to smile. He had to pretend. Vanessa, draped in the finest wrappers, sat beside him, her face glowing with pride. She had won the heart of Ameke's greatest man, or so she thought. As night fell, the village gathered to feast. Palm wine flowed, roasted yam and spicy pepper soup filled the air. But Michael's mind was elsewhere. The whispers of the villagers, the laughter, the toasts, they felt distant, hollow. When the final drum beats faded, it was time. "Tonight, our great warrior becomes a husband," someone shouted, and the village erupted in cheers. Michael led Vanessa into their hut, the space dimly lit by an oil lamp. It was supposed to be a night of passion, of union, but what followed would haunt him forever. Vanessa smiled softly, stepping closer. "Finally, you are mine, Michael Okoye," she said, her hand resting on his chest. But in that moment, something shifted. Her body tensed, her smile vanished. Then, without warning, Vanessa screamed. A scream so piercing, so filled with terror, it echoed through the entire village. Michael barely had time to react before Vanessa bolted out of the hut, her wrapper barely clinging to her body as she ran through the village like a woman possessed. "He is not normal," she cried. "Michael Okoye is cursed! Cursed!" The villagers spilled out of their homes, stunned and confused. Elders gasped, mothers whispered, and men looked on in disbelief. The same Vanessa who had been the envy of every woman in Ameke was now running from Michael, as if she had seen a spirit from the underworld. Michael stood at the entrance of the hut, fists clenched, his heart pounding. Not with anger, but with shame. He had no idea what had just happened, only that his life was beginning to unravel. Vanessa's family tried to calm her, but she wept uncontrollably. "I cannot stay with him. I cannot be his wife," she sobbed. By dawn, Vanessa had left Ameke, never to return. But it didn't end there. The villagers who had once praised Michael now whispered in corners, "Maybe he is cursed. No woman can stay with him. There's something dark following him." Yet Michael, ever the warrior, held his head high. He refused to believe it was anything more than a bad night, a misunderstanding. But as days passed, more women, bold ones, stepped forward, eager to prove that Vanessa was weak. Each one entered Michael's hut with confidence. Each one left in fear. Some screamed. Some were silent and shaken. Some simply vanished from the village altogether. The whispers grew louder. "He has a spirit wife. No mortal woman will ever have him. He is a cursed man." Mothers who had once dreamed of marrying their daughters to Michael now kept them far away. Children were told to avoid his path. Michael Okoye, once the pride of Ameke, had become an outcast, a shadow of the man he once was. But Michael didn't believe in curses. Not yet. But Mama Esther, far away in a kingdom of red clay walls, knew that secrets never stay buried. And soon Michael's fate would collide with a truth far greater than whispers. The once proud warrior of Ameke village had become a ghost among his people. Michael Okoye walked the familiar paths, but the villagers now averted their eyes. Mothers clutched their daughters tighter. Elders who once praised his strength now shook their heads in pity. He had become a man chained by whispers. Michael told himself it was all nonsense, but deep in the silence of his hut, when no one was watching, the doubt began to creep in. What if they were right? What if something truly followed him? It was Mama Okoye, his mother, who could no longer bear to watch her son fade away. One morning, as the sun barely kissed the horizon, she stood over him with determination in her eyes. "We are going to see Papa Nnamdi," she said firmly. Michael sighed. "Mama, I don't believe in charms and old stories." Mama Okoye's voice trembled. "Then believe in me, my son, because I can't stand and watch you be destroyed by something we do not understand." Michael had no strength left to argue. They journeyed deep into Oji Forest, to the shrine of Papa Nnamdi, a man both feared and revered. His small hut stood surrounded by white chalk symbols, cowries strung from trees, and the air felt thick with whispers only the forest could hear. When they arrived, Papa Nnamdi sat cross-legged before a fire, his eyes closed, his lips murmuring prayers older than memory. Without opening his eyes, he spoke. "You have come for answers, Michael Okoye." Michael's breath caught. He had not spoken a word since arriving. Papa Nnamdi's eyes slowly opened, cloudy but piercing. "You should have come sooner." The diviner reached into a small leather pouch, scattering cowrie shells onto the ground. He studied their pattern for a long moment, the lines of his face deepening. Then he said the words that froze Michael's soul. "You are not alone, Michael. You never have been." Michael frowned, confused. "What do you mean, Papa?" The old man's voice lowered, heavy with truth. "You have a spirit wife. From the moment you were born, she claimed you. She walks beside you, unseen by mortal eyes, always watching, always waiting. She has vowed that no woman of flesh and blood will ever have you." Mama Okoye gasped, covering her mouth. Michael felt the ground sway beneath him. "What nonsense is this?" he snapped, though fear had already gripped his heart. Papa Nnamdi was unmoved. "It is not nonsense, boy. Every woman who has entered your hut, she has chased away. She ensures your manhood never belongs to another. You are hers." Michael's fists clenched. "Then tell me how to break free. Tell me what ritual I must do." The old diviner shook his head slowly. "Spirit wives do not let go easily. They are not driven away by herbs or chance. Only an extraordinary event, one beyond the understanding of man, can sever that bond." Michael's heart sank. "So I am cursed, is that what you're saying?" Papa Nnamdi looked into his eyes deeply, as if peering into his very soul. "You are not cursed, Michael Okoye, but you are chosen. The path ahead of you is not clear. The spirit wife holds you tightly. She will not let go willingly. But perhaps, just perhaps, there is one who can stand against her." The words hung in the air like a riddle. Michael left the shrine with a heart heavier than when he arrived. For the first time, he realized this was not just idle village gossip. This was real. But unknown to him, far beyond the hills of Ameke, Cynthia Nwosu had just discovered a truth of her own. She was not a fatherless village girl. She was the lost daughter of Chief Emeka Nwosu and Lady Grace, rulers of Makalani town. And the woman who had raised her, Mama Esther, was no mother, but a kidnapper who had stolen her from the palace out of a broken heart. As Cynthia stood in the golden halls of the Nwosu estate, hearing her true story unravel, her heart ached not for the throne, but for a life left behind, a mango tree, a small village, and a boy who had always seen her. Two hearts, two secrets, two fates, unknowingly marching toward each other again. The sprawling walls of Makalani town were like nothing Cynthia Nwosu had ever seen. Towering red clay fortifications, grand courtyards lined with palm trees, bustling markets with traders from far and wide, This was a kingdom of power and prestige. Yet, for Cynthia, it was a prison. She now knew the truth. Chief Emeka Nwosu and Lady Grace Nwosu were her real parents, rulers of Makalani, who had spent years mourning her disappearance. Mama Esther, the woman she had called mother, was nothing more than a palace maid who had stolen her as an infant out of obsession and a heart twisted by unrequited love. Though Cynthia tried to adjust to her new life dressed in fine silks, served by maids, addressed as princess, her heart felt heavier with each passing day. The walls of the Nwosu estate were gilded, but they suffocated her. She didn't belong here. She longed for the simplicity of Ameke village, the warmth of its people, and most of all, she longed for Michael Okoye. Every evening, she would slip past the palace guards and wander to the outskirts of Makalani. She'd watch the common folk laugh, work, and live their simple lives, envious of their freedom. She yearned to sit under the mango tree once more, to hear Michael's teasing words, to feel like herself again. But Michael was gone, or so she thought. Meanwhile, back in Ameke village, Michael Okoye sat alone in his hut, staring at the ceiling, trapped by the weight of whispers that would not die. Every woman had fled from him. His name, once spoken with admiration, was now met with pity and fear. But there was something else now, a new restlessness in his soul. Papa Nnamdi's words haunted him. Only an extraordinary event can break this bond. Michael had waited for a miracle that never came. He had prayed, fought, endured shame, but nothing changed. Until one night, as the cold breeze swept through his hut, he stood up. "I can't stay here any longer," he whispered to himself. Beyond the rivers and hills lay Makalani town, a place of warriors, opportunity, and perhaps a new beginning. His cousin, Daniel Okoye, had always urged him to visit. "Come, my brother," Daniel had said. "There is a new life waiting for you here." For so long, Michael had resisted. Ameke was his home. His roots were here. But now, it felt like staying was no longer a choice. His life had collapsed in Ameke. He had to rebuild himself elsewhere. When he told his parents, his father nodded solemnly. But his mother, Mama Okoye, held back tears. "My son," she said, her voice trembling, "the world beyond Ameke is dangerous. You do not know what awaits you." Michael took her hands gently. "Mama, there is nothing left for me here, but I will make you proud." She cupped his face, trying to memorize it. "Go then, but go as the warrior I raised, not the broken man they think you are." Before dawn, Michael packed a small bag. As he stood at the gates of Ameke, he turned back one last time, taking in the village, the fields where he had worked, the river where he had laughed with Cynthia, the mango tree that had held their dreams. Then, with no more words to say, he walked away. Little did he know, with every step toward Makalani, fate was guiding him back to the only woman who had ever truly seen him. And their reunion would be nothing short of extraordinary. The journey from Ameke village to Makalani town was long and grueling. Dust clung to Michael Okoye's skin as he traversed hills and winding forest paths. But for the first time in months, he felt free. No whispers chased him here. No sideways glances. No women fleeing his presence. He was simply a traveler, a man searching for a new beginning. When he finally reached the towering gates of Makalani, his breath caught. The sheer size of the walls, the bustling market with spices, fabrics, and gold, and the energetic rhythm of the people. It was a world far removed from the humble simplicity of Ameke. Waiting at the entrance was his cousin, Daniel Okoye. "Michael!" Daniel's voice boomed with joy as he embraced him. "You finally listened. Makalani will be good to you, my brother. Here, you are not a curse. You are a man of strength." Michael smiled, though his heart was cautious. He didn't know what awaited him in this new land, but anything was better than the emptiness he had left behind. Within weeks, Michael had begun to rebuild himself. His unmatched strength and humility quickly earned him respect among Makalani's warriors. His work ethic was unmatched. His kindness won the hearts of the common people. The women of Makalani admired him too, but Michael had grown wary. He no longer chased admiration. What he truly yearned for was peace. Yet despite his newfound respect, every evening a familiar emptiness returned. When the sun set, his mind drifted to Cynthia Nwosu. Where was she? Was she safe? Did she ever think of him too? Unbeknownst to Michael, Cynthia was closer than he had ever imagined. One evening, as the golden sun dipped below Makalani's grand walls, Cynthia, dressed in a simple cloak to escape the suffocating title of princess, wandered to the Makalani warriors' arena. It was a modest training ground where young men sparred with wooden staffs, sharpening their skills. She wasn't interested in the warriors until she saw him, the broad shoulders, the familiar, determined stance, the way his hands moved, strong yet graceful. It couldn't be. But when Michael Okoye turned, their eyes met. For a moment, the world stilled. The market noise faded. The warriors' sparring disappeared. Cynthia's heart slammed against her chest. Her breath hitched. Michael's eyes widened. Disbelief painted across his face. It was her, the girl under the mango tree. The girl who had left with no goodbye. The girl who had never left his heart. Without thinking, Cynthia ran to him, her feet barely touching the ground. She crashed into his arms, clinging to him as if afraid he'd vanish. "Michael," she whispered, her voice trembling. He held her tight, his own breath shaky. "Cynthia, is this real?" She pulled back just enough to look into his eyes, tears brimming. "I'm here, Michael. I'm here." They stood there in the middle of the bustling arena, the world moving around them, but their universe had shrunk to just two people. The unspoken emotions, the lost time, the longing, it all found its way into that embrace. Michael led her away from the curious eyes, guiding her to a quiet garden behind the training grounds. Beneath the same stars that had once watched them in Ameke, they sat side by side, hands brushing, hearts racing. "So," Michael said, breaking the silence with a grin, "what have you been up to?" Cynthia chuckled, though her eyes were moist. "Oh, you know, I got kidnapped, found out I'm a princess, got trapped in a palace I hate." Michael's eyes widened, but he didn't push for more. Instead, he smiled gently. "And here I was, thinking you ran off with a prince." Cynthia smiled, but her heart pounded. She wasn't ready to tell him everything. Not yet. For tonight, it was enough that they had found each other again. The past would wait. But destiny had reunited them. And their story was only beginning. The night air of Makalani was warm and still. Beneath the whispering trees of the secluded garden, Michael Okoye and Cynthia Nwosu sat in a silence that wasn't empty. It was heavy with unspoken truths. They had been apart for too long, yet their bond felt untouched. But some truths couldn't remain buried. Michael's fingers absent-mindedly traced patterns on the grass. His heart was beating faster than any battle he'd ever fought. He knew this moment had to come. "Cynthia," he began softly, his voice breaking the fragile quiet. "There's something you need to know. Something I've never told anyone." Cynthia turned to him, her playful expression fading as she caught the seriousness in his tone. "What is it, Michael?" He took a deep breath. "You know how no woman ever stayed with me? How they all left terrified, even when I did nothing wrong?" Cynthia nodded, her brows furrowed with concern. Michael looked away, his jaw clenched. "I thought it was bad luck, but after Vanessa, after they all ran, my mother took me to a diviner, Papa Namdi. He told me something that has haunted me ever since." Cynthia's heart pounded. "What did he say?" Michael's voice dropped to a whisper. "He said I have a spirit wife, a being that claimed me at birth. She follows me unseen, making sure no mortal woman would ever have me." Cynthia's breath hitched. "Michael, I thought it was nonsense," he said bitterly, "but every time a woman entered my life, they fled. Until you." His eyes met hers, filled with an intensity that made her heart ache. "You didn't run. You didn't scream. You're here with me, like you always have been." Cynthia felt her throat tighten, her hand reaching for his. "Michael, There's something I haven't told you either. He frowned slightly, his heart now holding its breath. The day I left Ameke, it wasn't because Mama Esther wanted to move. It was because she wasn't my real mother. I was stolen from my birth parents as a baby. My real parents are Chief Emeka Nwosu and Lady Grace Nwosu, rulers of Makalani. Michael's eyes widened, disbelief washing over his face. I'm a princess, Michael, Cynthia said, tears brimming in her eyes. But I don't feel like one. I feel lost. I've spent my life thinking I was a nobody, only to find out I was stolen out of obsession. Michael was speechless. The village girl he had shared mangoes with under a tree was royalty. But as the weight of their truth settled in the air, something else became clear. Michael cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. Do you think any of that changes how I see you? Cynthia let out a shaky laugh. I was afraid it might. He smiled, that soft, knowing smile she had always loved. I don't care if you're a princess, Cynthia. I loved you when you had nothing, when we had dreams beneath trees. I love you now. Cynthia's heart swelled, her fears melting away. Michael's grip on her hands tightened. Maybe Papa Namdi was right. Maybe only something extraordinary could break my curse. Maybe that extraordinary thing is you. Cynthia's breath caught. Michael. He leaned closer, their foreheads resting together. I thought I was cursed, Cynthia, but maybe I was just waiting for the right woman. You've always been the right woman. The air between them grew still, as if even the universe paused to witness the moment. Then their lips met, soft yet full of years of unspoken love. This was no fairy tale kiss. It was a reunion of two souls who had fought through destiny's cruelty to find each other again. As they held each other, Michael felt the chains around his spirit snap. There was no fear, no supernatural force pulling them apart. In Cynthia's arms, he felt free. The curse was never in his body. The curse was in waiting for the one who was his perfect match. And with Cynthia Nwosu, Michael Okoye had found his liberation. But their journey wasn't over. Cynthia pulled back, her expression firm. Michael, my parents must meet you. They must know the man I love. Michael's breath stilled. To stand before the rulers of Makalani was a battle of its own. But for Cynthia, he would face anything. The grand halls of the Nwosu estate had witnessed many dignitaries, warriors, and nobles. But today they were silent with anticipation. Word had spread through Makalani town. The lost Princess Cynthia had returned with a man from Ameke village, a man who sought not power, but her hand. Michael Okoye stood before the gilded doors of the throne room, his heart pounding like a war drum. He had fought battles. He had endured shame. But this moment felt like the greatest battle of all. Beside him, Cynthia Nwosu reached for his hand, squeezing gently. You're not here to impress them, Michael. You're here because you're mine. He smiled, that quiet, knowing smile that had once melted her fears under a mango tree. The doors swung open. At the far end of the room sat Chief Emeka Nwosu, his presence commanding, his eyes sharp. Beside him, Lady Grace Nwosu, regal yet warm, watched with a gentleness that reassured Cynthia. They had been waiting for this day. Michael stepped forward, bowing deeply. My king, my queen. I am Michael Okoye of Ameke village. I stand before you not as a man seeking favor, but as a man whose heart belongs to your daughter. Chief Emeka's gaze was unreadable. The tales of Ameke have reached us, Michael Okoye. Tales of a warrior burdened by whispers. Michael stood tall. I was burdened, my king. But Cynthia, your daughter, freed me, not through rituals, but through understanding, through love. Lady Grace's eyes glistened with emotion. Chief Emeka remained silent for a long moment. Then a slow, approving smile broke across his face. Then you are worthy, not because of titles or birthright, but because you have earned her heart. The queen stood, stepping forward. She took Michael's hands into hers. She has chosen you, and we honor her choice. Welcome to our family, Michael. A wave of emotion crashed over Michael. He had spent years being labeled cursed, unworthy. But here, in the heart of royalty, he was being accepted for who he was. But Cynthia had one more request. Later that day, she approached her parents with a firm resolve. "There's someone I must free," she said. "She wronged me, she took me, but she also raised me. She made me who I am." Her parents exchanged glances, hesitant. "Are you certain?" Lady Grace asked gently. Cynthia nodded. She must be freed. And so, Mama Esther Adaku, the woman who had stolen Cynthia, was brought out from the palace dungeons. She looked frail, defeated, her once proud posture now bent under the weight of guilt. When she saw Cynthia, she fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "My child, I do not deserve your forgiveness." Cynthia knelt with her, lifting her gently. "You were wrong, Mama Esther, but I cannot carry hatred in my heart. You gave me love, even if it was born from a mistake." Mama Esther broke down, clutching Cynthia as if she might vanish. In that embrace, years of deception, pain, and longing dissolved. Cynthia was truly free, not just from her stolen past, but from the burden of resentment. When news of Michael Okoye's wedding to Princess Cynthia Nwosu spread back to Ameke village, disbelief filled the air. Michael, the cursed one, the same Michael we abandoned? But soon disbelief turned to celebration. They realized Michael had never been cursed. He had simply been waiting for the woman whose soul matched his own. His story became a lesson for every young man and woman in Ameke, a story of patience, dignity, and the power of true love. The wedding was a spectacle Makalani had never seen. Michael stood at the palace gates, draped in rich royal fabrics. Yet his heart remained the same, humble, strong, and kind. When Cynthia appeared, radiant in golden silks woven with threads of destiny, Michael felt his breath leave him. As they exchanged vows beneath the golden Makalani sky, the people rose in thunderous applause. This was more than a royal wedding. This was a celebration of a love that had fought through whispers, curses, and stolen identities. When Michael kissed his bride, he wasn't just claiming a title, he was reclaiming himself. And as Cynthia held his hand, they knew. All the pain, all the waiting had led them here. To this moment, to each other.